Okay, so we are in the longest section in this book, longest chapter that is, all about idolatry. Which, as we mentioned, arguably, that is the main one of the 7 Noachide commandments, is the prohibition against idolatry. That's the main one. So, we're on page 62, bottom of the page, which is chapter 5, part 5. One, anything that cannot be handled by man or made by man, even though it is worshipped, is permissible for use. Therefore, even if idolaters worship mountains or hills, trees that grow naturally were planted for fruit, excluding those planted originally for idolatrous reasons, because that was the whole thing that they actually used to do that. That would be the Asherah tree. We're not talking about that. Did I admit someone in? Public streams. See, a private stream, it may have been dug for idolatrous reasons, and may therefore be forbidden. Or animals. All are permissible for use. For that matter, the sun and the moon and the stars and all the planets. There's no problem, even though there's so many that used to worship them. Doesn't make them forbidden for benefit and use. And it is permissible to eat fruit that was worshipped so long as it remains in a state of natural growth, attached to the tree or bush. And it is permissible to eat worshipped animals. And an animal that is designated for use in idolatry as an offering, prior to its being offered, may be used or eaten. But once the animal is used for the idol, even in the slightest way, it becomes forbidden. For example, if the animal has been slaughtered for idolatry, or has been exchanged for an idol, or has been exchanged for something that has been exchanged for an idol, it is forbidden, as it is now monetarily equivalent to an idol. Amen. All right, so hope that's clear. 2, in the above situation, it is assumed that a person's own animal is used for idolatry. But when a person takes another's animal without permission and slaughters it for idolatry or exchanges it, it remains permissible for use. A person cannot cause anything to become forbidden which is not his own. Wait a minute. So for all of these, everyone's coming in now. We're on page 63 in the chapter of idolatry, chapter 5, part 5. Middle of page 63, we're up to number 3. Thank you. A bunch of people just came in, so let me at least quickly summarize what we just did. We said anything which can't be handled by man, like huge mountains or the sun. So then, even if it's worshipped, it does not become forbidden to benefit from and to use. That's why if you have an ocean that's huge and it's public, or a public stream, or anything like that, or trees that were not planted for idolatry. All of those things are not a problem for people to benefit from, even though they were worshipped. Then we said that a person cannot make someone else's property or possessions forbidden. So if someone worships their next door neighbor's pet dog or goat or cow or tree, well, the tree wouldn't make a difference anyway, whatever, it's irrelevant. Because in order for you to make something forbidden because it was worshipped, it needs to belong to you. Number 3, If one bows down to the earth in its natural state, the ground to which he bows does not become forbidden, but if he digs pits, ditches, or caves in the name of idolatry, this ground becomes forbidden. It's actually kind of connected to this week's Torah portion, this week's Parsha, Vayera. So when the three people, which were really, as we know, angels in disguise, came to Avraham Avinu, to Abraham, first thing pretty much that he had them do was wash their feet. And it wasn't only out of courtesy because they're coming from a journey and they traveled and presumably their feet, need to be washed, but it was actually because Avraham was so super careful and scrupulous about keeping the mitzvahs. And surely one of the main things that he stood for and that he promoted and that he campaigned and taught was monotheism and to categorically reject idolatry in any way, shape, or form. And it's brought down that in those days, it was a common type of idolatry for the Arabs of that time, of that era, to worship the dust of their feet or the ground. So that's what we're talking about. So if someone bows down to the ground, even if it's private property, they're not specifying that, but I believe that's what it would mean. So if someone has their own private field or their own yard, and they bow down to it in a form of idolatry, and they worship it, they serve it, whatever, because, as we said, it's not handled by man or man-made, it does not become forbidden for anyone else to benefit from the earth. But if they did something to it, like digging the ditches, etc., then that's a different story. 4, if a person bows down to water which has been displaced from its natural state by a wave washing it into a ditch or the like, it is not forbidden water because it was a natural movement. But if he takes the water in his hand and bows down to it, it becomes forbidden because now he's removed, he's physically, humanly removed the water from where it was. So again, the basic idea is that if it's in its natural state, or if nature did something to it, then that is not able to become forbidden. It's only with human intervention. 5, rocks of a mountain that a person worships are permissible so long as they remain in their natural place. But if they are handled and moved, then worshipped, they become forbidden. Because again, same idea. So even though the rock can be pulled out of the mountain, but if it wasn't, if it was worshipped as it was part of the mountain, so that's like the water in its natural state, or like the water that the wave brought into a ditch, etc. It has to have been removed from the mountain, humanly, physically, and then worshipped, and then it becomes forbidden. 6, if a person erected a pillar or even set up a brick with the intention of worshiping it, but he did not worship it, he didn't actually worship it yet, but he put it there with that intention, then other idolaters came along and worshipped it. It is forbidden, as this is considered an idolatrous pillar. So even though the person who set it up didn't worship it, but since he set it up with the intention of it being worshipped, whether by him or by others, but that was his intention, and then it was actually worshipped, doesn't have to be him, that becomes forbidden. Without getting off the subject too much, I just want to share an interesting little piece of Talmud, which you may or may not be familiar with. This is actually a censored piece of the Talmud, and you'll understand why it was taken out. It was not taken out by the Jews, by the rabbis or the sages. We have a number of segments and sections and words that were changed or omitted by the church when the Talmud was being printed. So the Talmud states the following story, which according to most is referring to JC himself and his teacher, his rabbi, Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia, great sage. And the story goes that, I mean, this is a factual story in the Talmud. The only question is it actually that person, or could it have been someone else? But this definitely happened. As they were traveling, and Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia and his disciples, so they stopped off at an inn. And it was a non-Jewish innkeeper. And the woman, the wife of the innkeeper, non-Jewish woman, was very cordial and nice to them. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia complimented something to the effect and said that, loosely translated, she's so nice. And let's say it was JC, said, but her eyes are not perfectly shaped. So they're not that attractive. They're a little bit round or something. And he was very upset, Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia, that this disciple of his thought that he meant her physical beauty. He meant her character, her behavior, her hospitality. So he gave him a sharp comment back. He told him off by saying, is that what you're looking at? Is that what you thought? Is that? And that kind of pushed him away. And he went, and it says that he took a brick and he said, you are my God. Right away, he wanted to go to the extreme. So he worshipped a brick. And well, I hope I'm not getting it out of order. At any rate, he was being pushed away by Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia. And I think that I may be confusing it, that this is what happened at the end. But at any rate, he was being pushed away by his teacher. And finally, every day he would come to him, Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia refused to accept him and to teach him Torah. And one day, he decided that if he rejects me today, I am completely giving up on this whole Judaism, the whole religion, and I'm going to do the worst. That same day, Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia, the teacher, had decided that if he comes to me again today, I'll accept him. I pushed him off enough rejection. I had to reject him, and now I will accept him. And here's the problem. This is how you could see that it was orchestrated from above. He then does come that day. However, the teacher, Rabbi Yeshua, was in the middle of prayer. So he gestured to him, he motioned to him something with his fingers. He misunderstood. He meant soon or come back later, whatever he motioned to him. He understood that to mean, well, that gave him the finger. No, he basically understood that as a rejection. So that's, I think, when he went and he took the brick and he said, you are my God. So from that, the Talmud says, how you have to be so careful and you should only push away with the left, but you should bring close and embrace with the right. So what reminded me of the story is because here we're saying that if someone erected a brick with the intention of worshiping it and it was worshipped, that brick then becomes idolatrous. Top of page 64, if you have the same edition. Number 7. Now, we said that it was pretty common in the years when the Jewish people left Egypt and received the Torah, for trees to be planted for the sake of idolatry. A tree planted in order that it may be worshipped as an idol is forbidden. In other words, even though it's a tree, and we said anything which is natural and not handled by man, but here it was planted with that intention. Equally forbidden are its branches, fruit, shade, and anything that might give one some kind of benefit. This tree is called an Asherah, and it's specifically mentioned in the Torah, Deuteronomy 16:21. There it says, "You shall not plant for yourselves an Asherah tree." It's right there. And that's talking about a tree that was planted for worship. And then no one is allowed to benefit in any way from that tree. So even if you just want to protect yourself from the heat, or you just want to relax a little bit, that is forbidden. Eight, if a tree is bowed to, although its trunk is permissible, all the shoots and fruit and branches and leaves that come forth during the time that it is worshipped are forbidden. In other words, anything that was there from before is fine. But from worship time and on, except for the trunk, it all becomes forbidden. We're talking about a tree that was not planted for the purpose of worshiping. It was after it exists in its full glory that it was worshipped. Nine, if idolaters watched the fruit of a tree and said that the fruit is there for them to make a drink for an idolatrous temple, and they made the drink and drank it on the day of their festival, this tree is forbidden. It is considered that they planted it for idolatry in the first place, and this is why its fruit was used. Even though we don't know of any declarations they made when they planted it. But if later on, when the tree is there, when the fruit is on the tree, they made this declaration, and then they actually went out and they did it, so then we say that we are to assume that it was planted for that purpose. Even though they may not have even said so when they planted it. So we didn't know it was an Asherah. 10. If an idol stands underneath a tree, so long as it is there, the tree is forbidden. It is considered an accessory to idol worship, and any pleasure from this tree, even its shade, is forbidden. If the idol is removed, the tree becomes permissible, for the tree itself was never served as an idol. And this can happen countless times back and forth. You bring the idol there, the tree is forbidden. You take it away, the tree is permitted, put it back, or bring a different idol. So as long as an idol is placed under a tree, it makes the tree at least temporarily forbidden. And again, we're talking about that the tree was not planted for the sake of the tree being worshipped. But because the idol is put there, that makes the tree forbidden. Eleven. If a house was not made or served as an idol, but was renovated, plastered, and decorated with images that were inlaid or carved in relief, like we said about the coins, in the name of an idol, one should remove the renovations, and then everything is fine. They are forbidden because they were made to serve as an idol, and the rest of the house is permissible for use. So as long as the house was not built with the intention of it being worshipped or house of worship. So then whatever is inappropriate should be undone or destroyed, and then it's fine. 12. If one brings idols into a house, for as long as they are there, the house is forbidden for use, as it is considered an accessory to idol worship, like the tree we spoke about. Which means you can't go into that house for any purpose, not even to use the bathroom. Once the idols are removed in a way that indicates a nullification of the house's use as an accessory to them, the house becomes permissible. If the idols were brought there by an idolatrous Noachite and an Israelite removes them from the house, this does not represent a nullification because it may be construed that the Noachite wishes the idols to remain, but the Israelite did not. Now, mind you, when he says Noachite, you may be wondering, how can you have an idolatrous Noachite? Isn't that an oxymoron? A Noachite means what, you people are. It's a non-Jew that took upon himself to observe and keep the 7 Noachite commandments. So how can he be idolatrous? So I believe that the language here that he's using, he means to say a non-Jew, because literally all of mankind are descendants of Noah, and therefore anyone who's not a Jew is literally a Noachite, even if they transgress all 7 commandments, God forbid, and they lead a life of sin. They're still Noachites. We just, in today's terminology, we don't really refer to them as Noachites. We call them a Gentile or a Goy or a non-Jew. When you say Noachite in today's world and in these circles that study and observe all these things, so that's what I think he means over here. So he says Noachite here, he simply means a non-Jew. So the problem is, if a Jew removes the idols from the house, that doesn't necessarily prove that the Noachite who brought them, that the non-Jew who brought them there is nullifying them. And the rule is that if a non-Jew makes an idol, in order for it to become nullified, he needs to destroy it, nullify it, or whatever. Therefore, just as the Noachite brought the idols into the house, a Noachite must take the idols out of the house in order for it to be considered nullification of the house's status as an accessory to idol worship. It doesn't have to be the same person who brought it in. I'm pretty sure that it could be anyone, but it has to be another one. Yes. 13. Top of page 65. 13. One may not use a forbidden house in any way. One may not enter it or sit in its shade. However, it is permissible to pass through its shadows. You don't have to avoid it if it's a big building and the way that the sun is set up. So now there's a shadow on that side of the street. That you don't have to avoid. However, number 14. It is also advised that one should distance oneself at least 8 feet from the entrance of a house of idol worship. Now they get 8 feet because it's 4 cubits. Many things in Jewish law.
Why didn't he say pious, an idolatrous ger or?
What was that?
I'm sorry, Rabbi. I didn't realize I had I was unmuted. I was reading the text. The edition I have is page 41 of 84, and I was just thinking out loud to myself. So forgive me.
Okay, no problem.
Please continue.
We're going to soon take comments anyway. Don't worry. So in Jewish law, many things go by a distance of 4 amos, 4 cubits. Every cubit is roughly 1.5 feet. So therefore, 8 feet is the larger measurement. There's obviously, like many things, there's different opinions as to how much it really exactly is, but 8 feet would mean that every cubit is 2 feet. So that's actually the strictest, or I should say the largest opinion, that 1 cubit is 2 feet. So it's really less than 8 feet. But the point is that it's advised, it's not mandatory, but it's advised that one should distance himself that distance of 4 cubits from the entrance of a house, of idolatrous house. Now, I know for a fact, years ago, let's speak about in the 1950s or so, it was amongst many very observant and Hasidic Jews. It was very common. I'm not saying that afterwards it doesn't exist, but it was very common that when walking by a building which has the awning which sticks out, and sometimes it goes very far out, way onto public property. I don't know the legalities of all that, but you can have anything, any building, and sometimes it actually goes all the way to the street. So for that little piece, by the entrance, even have this today by various different movie theaters or things like that, that it actually goes out pretty far, and oftentimes, or by hotels, well, that may just be I'm saying part of the building actually will go out and extend almost, if not all the way up to the street where the cars drive. So it used to be by Hasidim, since we're so opposed by Hasidic Jews to watch movies. Now, back in the day, the only way to watch a movie was to actually go to a movie theater. And that was considered by the spirit of the law forbidden. I'm not saying by the letter of the law. By the spirit of the law, for a Hasidic person, watching a movie is no good. Therefore, the boys, the Hasidic boys, would actually walk around the awning as to not walk under that part of the building, and treating it as if it's an idolatrous house of worship. Now, of course, technically speaking, it's not, unless they also, worship that. But I'm saying, but because of the content of the movies, which they entail the 3 big sins, many of the movies of, they show a lot of idolatry, adultery, and murder. So because of that, they would want to avoid it. But getting back to what we're talking about, the letter of the law, if it's an idolatrous place, so it's advisable to distance oneself 4 amos from the entrance. Even though it's public property and you could just walk right by it, try to go a little further. Now, here in Chicago, a number of years ago, there was a church that basically went out of business. Over the years, there was no more clientele. I don't know exactly the history, whether they merged with another place or they just completely dismantled and went out of business. And they owned this big, massive building, the church, with the so-called sanctuary and all the other parts of the building. It's in the heart of a very observant Jewish neighborhood. So some Jews saw this as a tremendous opportunity to buy the building, and the church wanted out. They wanted to get money and get rid of this big building that they really have no use for in this neighborhood. The reason I bring this up is because it involves a whole number of questions. Can Jews, buy the church, pay money to, let's say they're idolaters, pay money to idolaters, and then what do you do with the building? Can you use it for apartments, for offices? And of course, you can guess, what do you think the Jews wanted to use the building for? Big, huge building, turn it into a synagogue, lahavdil, as we say, make a separation between holy and the opposite. So I don't know all the details. I was not involved. However, I remember from back then that the word was, people said, was that the ruling that they received, the rabbinic ruling was, they can, or perhaps should, buy the building. However, they need to obviously get rid of anything idolatrous, get rid of all of the idols, crosses, whatever there are over there, make sure, get it all out. And then it has to sit unused, unnamed for a certain period of time, whether it was 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And the idea was that it should be, so to say, forgotten, or it should be disassociated with what it used to be. And then you can go ahead and transform it and do what you want. And gut it. So if I'm not mistaken, what they ended up doing was they actually knocked down the entire building. So that would be less of an issue. It wasn't just that they were using the building now for a synagogue. So it was just the property, it was just the ground. But they did wait a number of years. And then they definitely gutted it. And I think they actually raised the whole building and then made it into a beautiful synagogue. So that's right here in the neighborhood. Another such building. The unfortunate thing, this is a little bit off topic, just a little bit Jewish history. This is not Torah, and therefore I can share this with you without any hesitations. But I'm going to tell you, it's common knowledge, and I'll share it with you. It's a very sad part of the history of America, Jewish history of America. Many, and I stress the word many synagogues were turned into churches, the opposite of the story that I told you. And basically what happened was you had the Jews that came here whenever it was in the beginning of the 20th century or in the 1920s or whatever it was, that had money before the Depression and built these humongous, beautiful edifices. And the interior was just like, wow. I mean, beautiful, beautiful synagogues. The Holy Ark, everything was like amazing, magnificent. And they were used. And then the neighborhood just became terrible. It became full of criminals and became dangerous. And that's really the story that's the Jewish history. They keep moving away and being chased away from neighborhood to neighborhood. And they needed out. Now, what do you do with this humongous thing? And the non-Jews that were taking over the neighborhood wanted to buy it. And then they gave them a lot of money and they sold it, so they did. And even though the Jews knew that that's forbidden to do, it was a very difficult challenge, or we would call it a test for the Jewish community to withstand that. Like, what are you supposed to do? What do you do with this building? And that's why, now that I mention it to you, you can still find it. If you go around different neighborhoods, different areas, this is all around the United States. But here locally, if you go to the south side of Chicago, you can find over there, not only the south side, different neighborhoods, big buildings, churches, have the cross, and there's Hebrew words that they didn't put there, or they still have the stained glass that has the Jewish Magen David and various different things. And that's because originally when it was built, it was done like that, and they just never got rid of it. Maybe because it's so beautiful, or maybe because they're proud that they were able to transform. Whatever, I don't know. That's already speculation. But fact, I'm telling you facts. These buildings used to be synagogues, and many of them still have the signs of them that they were synagogues. And it's not allowed. A Jew is not allowed to sell a synagogue and turn it into, anything actually, but surely not into that. So if you have, but where else? There's another place that has a similar story of where it was. Oh, okay. Then you have another place right here in the neighborhood that used to be a church, which took up almost the entire block. I mean, the building plus the parking lot and all that. And again, there was no clientele, and the neighborhood became predominantly Jewish, observant Jews, and they went out of business. So eventually, they sold, the building was knocked down, and that whole block was pretty much left desolate, and then they built up homes. So now you have the entire block, if I'm that side, if I'm not mistaken, house after house, every single house, I think, today is owned by observant Jews. Nice big mezuzahs on the front doors of each one of those houses. But I remember when that spot were churches. So there are laws about how and what to transform. Okay, any questions? You know what? I'm sorry. We do want to do one more. No, we'll stop here. We're up to 15. Up to 15. Any questions on what we discussed so far, thus far?
Rabbi Turn, it's James Gosnell. The author has Chochmat Adam as quite a lot of references here besides the Mishnah Torah. Could you talk a little bit about where the Chochmat Adam comes from?
I would need to research them.
That's fine.
Okay, but I noticed that myself, and I was planning on, doing some research and then, sharing it with everybody.
Thank you.
Rabbi, everybody, I have to bow out. This is James Bakunis in Springfield. I beg your pardon, but I have to bow out. I just wanted to also extend my congratulations to you, Rabbi, on your grandson.
Yes, thank you. I think I'm going to be seeing you hopefully this Tuesday.
I'm going to make every effort to go. Yes, sir.
Me too.
It's a high honor for me. So thank you. It'll be my first bris. Oh,
wow.
But
It's
thank
going to
you,
be
everybody on this class. I do thank you, Rabbi, for leading. And I thank you, my colleagues, for bearing with me. Till next time.
And remember, we're not on for next week. We're not on, and the week after is what they call in this part of the world Thanksgiving. So we're not sure about that. But next week, a week from today, we are scheduled that we're not having a class.
Yes, thank you. I've been keen on catching, looking for Bob's emails to notify me of classes. So thank you.
Okay.
And thank you, Bob, Aaron, and James. Thank you for allowing me to study with you. And thank you, Rabbi Turin.
Sure.
Till next time, I'll see you soon.
All right. All the best.
Peace.
Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Peace. Good night.
Mazel tov, Rabbi Turin.
Thank you. Let's see. So anyone else have any other questions or comments, or want to enlighten us? Where's
No, I have no questions or comments. I'm just listening, and so far everything's been pretty much self-explanatory.
okay. If you have no questions, we can continue. All right, number 15. It is forbidden to listen to the music, smell the fragrance, or gaze at the ornaments of idolatrous worship. Or the more so, one is forbidden to gaze at the idol itself. Now, what I'm going to tell you now, I am pretty sure that I am correct. However, I may not be, but I think I am. And I tell this to my Jewish students And really, there's no reason why it wouldn't apply to non-Jews. So for Noachites, what I'm going to tell you, I think it applies to you as well, applies to everyone. And that is as follows. Let's assume that Christianity is idolatry. That's given number one. Now, during the season of December 25th and on, and as we know that they're very scrupulous, and they're very zrizim, they're very quick to start early and make the preparations early, and they don't just wake up the last minute. So you have these trees all over the place, besides in private homes. And then you have the lights. Now, I've heard from a number of people, especially, believe it or not, this is my experience, Israelis that come here either for vacation or to visit or for a sabbatical of a year or for whatever they have different reasons that they live here for a couple of years. They enjoy, understandably so, going to areas like downtown, and it's all those lights that they have in the December, January period of time, going there at nights, in the winter nights, and seeing all those lights. And they think it's so beautiful, and they're going there with no bad intentions, strictly to enjoy the beauty. Well, if those lights are Xmas lights, and if that holiday is idolatrous, it is forbidden to look at the lights for the purpose of enjoying it. Nothing to do with worship from my end, nothing to do with believing in anybody or anything, nothing at all. And if it wouldn't be a holiday, I would enjoy the lights just as much. I'm just looking at the light. It's forbidden because those lights are that type of light. Or the music. Different tastes. Some people like different types of music. Classical music, rock and roll, jazz, whatever. But you have to understand, as you guys probably know better than I, that there are what's the term from the church music, the gospel music, whatever. There's a word for it. There's gospel church music, and it was composed for the church. It's not like, oh, they took some. That's a problem. And during that season, of course, so on the radio or in the malls and all sorts of public places, that's playing. Okay, you're not obligated to put earplugs, but you cannot intentionally try to hear the music and enjoy it, even though your intention might be strictly and honestly and sincerely just because you like the music, even if it's without words, or you don't care for the words, but it's the music. It's not allowed, even if you're doing it just for fun or enjoyment or pleasure, which at least in this part of the world, it's very hard to avoid it.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Okay, so we got shopping malls all over the place. We go to places, we buy stuff, and even in a dollar store, you walk in there, they're piping this music through the system. Now, sometimes we can't avoid it, but now I know that we've all been conditioned to listen to it in our life. How do we not, sometimes it's not intentional like you're talking about. But
I would say as follows. Some people, okay, let's put this topic aside for a moment. Some people, I think especially women and girls, They go to shopping malls with the simple intention of, I don't know if it's window shopping or it's an outing. They're going for fun. They're going to the mall because they enjoy the atmosphere. It's not like, oh, I have 3 items I need to buy. Let's go to the mall. And when I'm there, I might get some more stuff. No. They have nothing. They have no purpose. They're going to these shopping malls because they want to go to the shopping mall. That's a relatively common thing to do. So on that, using that as an example, if someone has in mind that I'm going to the dollar store or to the mall because I want to hear that music. Furthermore, I will not turn that music on intentionally in my home, but I like the music. So, hey, here's a way I can do it. I can't avoid it outside. I'm going to go out to hear the music. I'm going to go wherever it is, this public place, and I'm going to go there. So I'm going to the bowling alley. Not because I want to go bowling, because I want to hear the music. So I'll just sit there for a half hour, relaxing, and I hear the music. No. So if you're going bowling, that's fine. You're not obligated to make yourself crazy. Bowling is permissible. It's not a house of worship. Bowling is not forbidden. So if you're going to the bowling alley, but they have this music blasting and you enjoy it, I mean, if you want to be strict, go to a different bowling alley or whatever, figure it out. But I don't think you're obligated to put earplugs in. Just try not to intentionally enjoy it, or don't go for that purpose. Don't go to bowling.
I'm thinking about Home Depot. You go to Home Depot to buy some tools and they're playing music.
Let's say within your radius, there's a Home Depot and there's a Lowe's. And they both serve you just as fine financially. Everything's good. They have supplies and the price is the same. There's no difference. And the distance is pretty much the same. Why did you choose A over B? Because they have that music playing. No, then go to B. That's what I'm saying. You're not obligated to drive an extra 10 miles or whatever to get to the other place. But if you have a choice between these 2 places, consciously, don't go to the one that's playing that music because you want to also enjoy that music without transgressing. But otherwise,
well, I was basically saying you could go to Home Depot, but at the same time, Lowe's has got the same music. So you might be caught up with both of them.
Right. Then it makes no difference. Then that's not into the equation. And I'm going to share with you something which I hope is wrong. I hope it's not true. There's a Hanukkah, a very famous Hanukkah melody that is really across the board. Jews everywhere know the tune. And I once heard, not from a reliable source, and I don't know it to be factual, but it makes sense. And I hope it's not true. I once heard that it is a church tune that the Jews, somebody just took it. And that is the tune for the words are holy. The words were composed by some great Jew. Ma'oz tzur. It's very hard words in the Hebrew. It's written in a poetic way. And there's a number of stanzas. So the first letter in Hebrew of each stanza spells the name of presumably the person who made it, which was a kind of a common thing when they would make liturgy, the songs. So it spells his name, huh?
Lyrics?
No, not lyrics. It spells Mordechai. Now this is Hanukkah, not Purim. So but apparently it was the name of the person who made it. So the words are good. The words are holy. Nothing against the words, but the tune, the melody, at some point, I can't really sing. I'm not musically, but it goes something like this. Ma'oz tzur Yeshuasi l'chana elishabeyach tikon beis tefilasi dam da da dam da da dam 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 da 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 da. And I mean, it would be interesting. I think I don't want to know the answer, but unless it's just not true. But it would be interesting to find out where that originated. And it wouldn't be surprising if it originated back. And again, one can make the argument that as long as it hasn't been used for idolatrous purposes for long enough, and as long as it's been forgotten who is the author or why it was composed, then it can be taken and transformed. We could make that argument, just like we said about the buildings or whatever. Now on that note, but that's a whole different topic, and that would be a whole class about music. There's holy music, there's forbidden music of idolatrous, and then there's most music, which is neutral ground. And there are certain melodies that were not holy. I'm not saying unholy, but were not holy, and they were transformed by tzaddikim. So one of them is Napoleon's March. Anybody who's been around Chabad at all, especially in Yom Kippur, there is, and this is historically, Napoleon had, with trumpets and all, they had a march, how his soldiers would go out, not just come back from battle, but go out to battle with a victorious march. And that gave them the stamina and then the adrenaline. I mean, it had a very strong psychological effect on the soldiers that we're going to win. And it's a very upbeat, victorious tune. And it became a Chabad tune, a Chabad melody, going back to the first Chabad Rebbe of over 200 years ago, the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, Rabbi Shneir Zalman. And that is Napoleon's March. Dam da dam da dam da 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 la 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 lam ayah bam bam hey hey la 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 da 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 dam, and it goes on and on. It gets stronger and stronger, and that is how we conclude the holy day of Yom Kippur. After fasting and praying the entire day, 10 days, the month before, and now we've come to this point, and we have full faith that we are forgiven and we're white and clean and pure. So now it's a victory over the Satan. Then, speaking of France, there's another tune, which actually it is the French national anthem. Can't get much more non-Jewish than that. And all of a sudden, completely unexpected, no heads up beforehand in any way, shape, or form. In 1973, on Simchas Torah, festival where we dance with all the Torahs with tremendous, tremendous, tremendous joy, on Simchas Torah, at the Hakafis, at the dancing, at a certain point, in 770 Eastern Parkway, the Rebbe, Melech HaMashiach, started singing using the words from our prayers. So again, the words were always there and always holy, ever since they've been composed. We say it in our prayers every Shabbos morning. He put this tune, the French national anthem, to these words. There is Habina Babracha L'chai Elamim Hagar Vagidul L'chai Elamim Hadei Avadibur L'chai Elamim Ay la dai 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 da da. And that on and on and on. And then shortly thereafter, they changed, the French changed a little bit, some nuance in their national anthem. And years later, in 1991-92, the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach explained that the reason why the non-Jewish French government made that change is because that melody was a negative one, was unholy, and since we took it and we transformed it, and now it came into the domain and it's a holy song, the melody became sacred and holy. So therefore, they had to alter it and change it a little bit. Now, the words to the melody originally are kind of gruesome, some of the words. It's all about spilling blood and killing and whatever, because we're talking about the revolution. So taking something which was composed with certain implications. And then there's other ones. There's another song that the Rebbe HaMashiach taught, which we call Shamil. And there's a whole legend behind it, that they're in the Carpathian Mountains over there. There was a leader of a group of bandits. His name was Shamil, and wasn't Jewish. May sound a little Jewish, but no, it wasn't Jewish. And a whole story of how they could not successfully capture them. They were on the top of these mountains, and they kept fighting from, they come and do their thing and keep escaping. So they wanted to capture him. So finally he was lured in, he was tricked. They were going to make a treaty with you, and they caught him that way, and they imprisoned him, put him in a dungeon or whatever, and he was looking from the window, seeing the high mountains where he used to rule as a king, and now he's stuck. So longing for those days, he composed a very, very heartfelt tune. And Hasidim took that tune, and the Rebbe HaMashiach explains the reason why is because that expresses the longing of the soul to go back to what it used to be before it was imprisoned and stuck in this physical world, in this physical body. So that's a whole different issue of taking tunes, music, and transforming it. But back to the point here, music that is, by definition, idolatrous is not permitted for a person to enjoy. And you can't even gaze at anything, even though you're looking at it only for its physical beauty. It's an ornament. Or the person's looking at the idol that's being worshipped because of its beauty. They know it's just a piece of wood or metal or what have you. They're not worshiping it. They even think it's so foolish for anybody to worship it. But it's so beautiful. Not allowed. You're actually not even allowed to say that it's so beautiful. Can't even praise it. Or smell the fragrance. Same thing. That's also not permitted. Okay, let's do 16. Number 16. If one must walk near a place of idol worship, he should cover his eyes, stop up his ears, and hold his nose to avoid having any sensory benefit from the idolatry, if you can. Even if the person has no intention of taking pleasure from these sights, sounds, and smells, he is still bound to conduct himself in the manner described, since he will certainly receive some pleasure from them if he does not so act. And one is obligated to be cautious even in a situation where there are no alternative routes. Now again, that does not mean to endanger yourself. If you're driving the car, don't close your eyes, by no means. But what it could mean is close windows. You don't want to hear the sounds, do your best. Close the windows, or whatever the case may be. So he seems to be a little bit stricter than the way I was saying about going to the mall or to Home Depot, that, as long as that's not your intention, but, this seems to be a little bit difficult, this number 16, because especially, again, here in the United States, that time of year, and it's not just for a day or two, it's for a month or more, that anywhere you go almost, you have that music or what have you. So it's difficult.
Well, that would be like a bathhouse that has idol in it. It's not a house of worship.
Right.
But they just have it there for decoration, so we would not gaze upon it, we would not derive pleasure from it.
Right.
But we don't have to avoid it.
Right. So, thank you. Okay, so try to remember exactly where we're up to, and we will reconvene probably with the help of Hashem in 2 or 3 weeks. See, it's coming. Saying the following one. Ooh, Thanksgiving is Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Rosh Chodesh Kislev, big Hasidic festival. So we may have a big Farbrengen party here that Thursday night. It's in 2 weeks from now. So it's very likely that we will not have a class in 2 weeks from today as well.
So the next class will probably be in 3 weeks.
We
Okay.
won't get to see any of your smiling faces for 3 weeks.
Well,
That's
you
hard.
could, you're welcome to come in person to the Farbrengen in 2 weeks from now.
You said that's on Thanksgiving. That's the night of Rabbi Shimon's fundraiser.
Oh,
I'll be working that.
where is it? What is he doing it in person, on Zoom, or both?
Yes, at the show.
Okay. Uh-huh.
But
They said-
if possible, I'll come.
Very good. All right, everybody.
You guys have a good evening.
You as well, Bob and Rabbi.